Okay, so we are back for another episode of Buying Miami Life, Love, and Real Estate. And today I'm really excited to have my guest on because up until now, we have been doing everything from a professional's point of view, like my point of view, or an attorney's point of view, or a home insurance point of view. But I wanted to bring reader or listeners into the process from a buyer's point of view. And so I had to think of all of my buyers, like who would be the best to have this conversation with. And I thought of Jeff Gamboa, who is joining us today. Say hello, Jeff.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
How's it going?
and
I'm so happy. I'm so happy the other three couldn't make it. So here I am, fourth place. So excited. Just kidding. Just
um,
kidding.
Jeff came to me through a referral, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And this is like a very typical story of what happens to so many people in Miami. He moved to South Florida with his girlfriend. She was moving too. They were both moving from different cities, right, Jeff?
Right at
Right?
the time that's right. We were coming back and getting a new place and
Right.
engaged at the time, I think. Yeah, we were
I th-
engaged at the time.
yeah.
So
Now they're married, and we'll unfold your story. But
yeah, of course.
they were moving from different cities, and we had to find them an apartment, which we did. And then in the course of that time, they got married, and they had their first child, and they kind of like, and they got a dog. And then, so then they were two adults, a dog, a newborn baby, and a two-bedroom apartment in Midtown. And we had to transition them into a home, a single-family home. You guys grew out of your apartment, and it was like right at the time that we were getting. It was 2020, right? 2020, yeah.
We had moved to the condo was 18.
Mm-hmm.
And then to get out, we started getting serious about it towards middle of pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And then we pulled the trigger and we closed on December 31st in 2021.
Yeah. So
Right.
we're going to unpack all of this because there's an interesting reasoning on why we closed on December 31st, if you remember.
I know, I do.
Yeah, yeah, we had to close on for tax reasons, but we'll explain that a little bit more. I've talked about that in other episodes, and I use your example. But Jeff, let's give listeners just a little background on your story and your rental experience. I'd be interested for you to tell them like what was the pain point? What was the point? Because we were kind of, you and I were casually looking. We
Right.
were in the conversation, and then something happened, and the tables turned, and like we got serious real quick. So
Yep.
let's tell them about that, and
Yep.
you go.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
came down to South Florida. I'm not a native. I feel this is home for sure now. 2010, and Heidi, my wife, moved in 2008, both for work purposes. And we were both single at the time and had never met each other. And like our own perspective of Miami was very different. You know, I was single, ready to mingle. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll move to Brickell or I'll do the high rise thing, which I did. And that
Mm-hmm.
was it. She was studying and she was in school. So she did kind of that version up in Broward County. And from the duration of 2010 till 2016, I had been in Broward County, I had been in Miami, I'd done the high rise in Brickell, and we had gotten engaged. She was in training long distance. So I was down here in Miami. I had moved out of my high rise condo to Broward for a few years while I was going back and forth long distance and said, okay, we're engaged and we're gonna finally be in the same city, the city we love, which is Miami in 2018. So I reached out to some resources through my network, and they gave me to one person who gave me to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I called, and this might not even be part of the story, but for me, I remember
God,
distinctly getting out.
God only knows what I said.
Well, that's the best part. So I remember calling, and I'd spoken to two other, and I would say nice people. Give me a second before you assume what I'm going to say. And then I called you, and I don't know what I said. All I said was, "Hey, I'm thinking about this neighborhood, and here's our story." And you just shot me straight. You just kept it real. You said, "Honey, no, like that's what everyone says. I'm hearing you. That's not where you want. Let me take you around, and then you can see." And I'm just whatever you said, it gave me the impression of okay, here's someone who's from here, and that was all the difference for me because I was always hearing it from the transplant version or the single version or the newly married, and we only know like a fraction of Miami versus you spoke the Miami language, you spoke like you were from Miami, you knew the areas, you were saying things to me, and I don't recall about, oh, well, if you live here, you feel this, or you probably have experienced this. And I said, yes, yes, and yes. And no one else has ever known that about my experience. So I knew it just felt good. The vibes were really good for our conversation. I said, this is going to be our realtor. This is going to be our realtor.
Hmm.
And so we were looking for a rental, and we just said, okay, we're going to be finally in the same city in 2018. We've got a year before that happens, but let's do something we wouldn't normally do. And my wife, she is like her inner dolphin, ocean dwelling beachcomber self wanted to be on the beach. I'm the restaurateur, that guy, city slicker, even though I'm from suburbia. And I wanted to be downtown, like in the action. And so that was the start of it. And we went to all different places. I remember a lot of different tours with you, Joe. And I remember, there was something not right here, something not right there. And we went to the building. Are we saying buildings now?
Yeah,
That a big deal?
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
buildings. Yeah.
So we went all across. We went from like we went in Sophie's, everywhere,
Yeah.
everywhere. And we ended up at this place called Hyde in Midtown, which
Yep.
was a newer building at the time. It was still in its final phases.
Hmm.
And it was a no from a standpoint of when we went, we didn't like the units. Heidi said no. And I remember getting a call with you saying, all right, this is what she wants, this is what I want. What else is there? And I think you said, hey, let's go back to Hyde. I know you didn't like the unit, but there's another unit. It's an '06 unit or '07 unit. You
Yep.
have to see this one. And I think you just knew right away because I wanted modern, I wanted walkability, I wanted in the action.
Hmm.
You wanted ocean, like get up, coffee on the balcony, and enjoy that view. And I remember we took the elevator up, and the drive there, Joe, was I don't know, I don't know. I just knew we weren't going to get this place. This wasn't going to be a good spot, but at least let's check it off because Joe has done her due diligence. And we opened up the unit.
Hmm.
So funny. And it opened up. Yeah, it was empty, of course. And it was like, oh, and this beautiful view into the ocean. We were at like 27th floor or like
Uh-huh.
30th floor. And we walked, and if you remember, we walked in 2 steps in, she was done. I said, do you want to see? And my wife's impulse in the most beautiful way, like her impulse balances out my planning. And she said, done.
Uh-huh.
I said, oh, you like this one. So we walked around, took video. I remember leaving. She says, that is the perfect balance of what you want and what I want. And so we ended up there in 2018, right
Hmm.
before we got married.
Hmm.
And we stayed there till for 3 years in 2021. We had our first baby
Hmm.
in that condo. We had our first dog in that condo
Hmm.
and a lot of awesome memories.
Yeah.
So
That
that's how we got started with you.
Yeah, that was a great unit. I love that unit because it was a split floor plan and you had the extra little den area. And then the balcony, was the whole range of the unit. So you had access from every room. And Heidi got her water view, which is what
Yeah,
she
and it was
wanted.
the greatest part about that building was you would think for as new as the building was at the time, there was no way, but it was fairly within price point,
Yeah.
and the amenities were brand new, so it was a
Hmm.
killer building versus some of the other spots which I liked, like Icon Bay. I liked Icon
I
Bay,
like Icon
but
Bay.
I liked it. I didn't love
Hmm.
it. And but
Yeah.
Hyde just had everything, and yeah,
Well,
those 3 years were awesome. We really enjoyed the condo life there.
well, with Midtown, it's one of the few places in Miami that you have that walkability. And
Yep.
it's not as, it's just a different vibe than Brickell, where Brickell is another place that you have great walkability, and you had been in Brickell. But, Brickell has its pros and cons as well. And so I think
Right.
with Midtown, you have, the design district right there, and you have the view, and you have all the great restaurants.
Yeah.
And I
I think
mean,
for anyone that wants a condo life and they don't have to be on the beach, I'm always going to recommend Midtown Edgewater
yeah.
because you have kind of the best combo. You're at Wynwood, Edgewater. You can be in Brickell if you want. You can go downtown.
Hmm.
And I think if you're to the level of loving to eat that we do, that's epicenter right
Epicenter.
there for
Yeah.
getting into
Yeah.
everywhere.
No, I'm with you. And
So
actually, not Midtown, Hyde, and that floor plan that you guys had, I think is just the culmination of the best that
yeah, I
you
think
can get.
so.
So then, um, I remember you and I were like going back and forth, and I was showing you. You're like, "Oh, we want to buy a house." We were looking at different areas. We looked at Miami Shores. We kind of, and then I remember something happened. It was a trigger, and it went from like casually looking to okay, we're gonna start looking like seriously. So what
Yep.
was it? I remember it was just
Um,
you and me, and then Heidi jumped in. And once Heidi jumped in, that's when that
yeah,
ship took off.
well, so you, as you know, we had gotten together many times. We've since then became good friends, but as we were just getting together casually, as our realtors, because this cool hybrid of it's our friend and our realtor, you would say, "Hey, so what are you guys thinking?" Because you always
Mm-hmm.
had you'd always say, "You asked me to ask you,"
Mm-hmm.
which is what we did, and we would say, "Sure," and then we would start. I think phase one was let's let Joe show us the neighborhoods. We trusted her for the condo, so and she's from here. Let's do the same thing with neighborhoods for in like suburbia
Mm-hmm.
slash proper Miami. And I think what happened was we were just so disappointed with our run of visits. So, first, if you know the Miami area, if you're watching this, Morningside.
Yeah.
So it's across the street on on Biscayne Ave, right by the bridge. And in theory, it looks awesome. And we went
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, we weren't feeling it. And it's always a combination of this, what you're going to get for your money, size of land, location, safety. Miami Shores was a little bit on the older side for us.
Mm-hmm.
El Portal was we just had this really wrong conception of what El Portal was. So it really wasn't for us. Cute, cool homes, but not our thing. And I always grew up here thinking because I'm a transplant and I work with a lot of students who grew up here in really well-to-do families, and they all lived in the burbs. They all lived in South
Deep,
Miami,
deep in the
deep
burbs.
like the deep burbs where if you're not from here, you go, oh, I wouldn't live there. What's that area?
Yeah.
And it was South Miami, Westchester, down.
Uh-huh.
And so we started doing a little bit of visiting with you, and it was okay. And then we went to Pinecrest, and at the time, this was around pandemic. The prices started skyrocketing
Yeah.
around that.
Yes,
So
that's when we
we
had
went
that
from
craze.
yep. So this was the casual looking. We didn't like the neighborhoods, and I think after 3 or 4 weekends with you, we said we're not in a hurry anymore. We're okay staying another 3 years if we need to here and take our time. I think that was our call. Like we are going to take our time, and you were very sure whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But we were still
and
looking.
we were still looking slowly, but nothing, no neighborhoods were catching. And then I remember, I think it was a combination of the prices hitting,
Mm-hmm.
like skyrocketing. Also, there's this mass flux of people from out of area, and the vibe of Midtown for us changed
Yeah.
from wow, you could really, it's family friendly enough, and you could see yourself the first few years staying here raising children to our version of raising children would not match with what was happening at that time in Midtown
Mm-hmm.
and Design District. Like the
Right.
type of people moving down, the out of areas, and whatever you want, however you want to define that, if you go to that area, just wasn't our thing. The building makeup, the clientele in the building started changing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there were two episodes in the building, nothing bad or dangerous, but just one of those. Heidi said, "Yeah, I think we're done
We're
with
ready
condo
to
life.
go.
We're ready to go, and we're ready to go specifically from Hyde.
Mm-hmm.
Its time has passed."
Yeah.
And that was the first trigger. The second trigger was space. Heidi really was about space. And
Yeah.
so for us going to the Pine Crests of the world and the Coral Gables, aside from the higher property taxes, we were just looking at what we were paying, what we were willing to pay to what we were getting.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that's when your I guess expertise for us came in. You said, well, I know you haven't mentioned this neighborhood yet, but I'd like you to take a look past, I think the falls was our most
Mm-hmm.
south point.
Yeah.
Look past the falls. I said, well, it's like Lion King, we don't go there. Like, what is that area?
Yeah. What is that?
It's called Pinecrest, but it's really called Palmetto Bay.
Uh-huh.
It's like, oh, I only knew Kendall and Pinecrest in South Miami. It's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to be west, like Westchester Doral.
No.
And so we said, okay, let's check it out. And the prices looked way better. And the first few runs, I was already kind of bah humbug. No, I don't like this house. This is too old. And we found a house that we liked.
Mm-hmm.
I will not say the name out of respect, but it began with a Y. Remember her
Yeah,
name?
I
Okay,
know.
okay,
I
okay.
know.
Three syllables. Three
Uh-huh.
syllables. So we'll call it the House of Y.
The
We
House
went to
of
visit.
Y.
The House of Y was awesome in Palmetto Bay. It was on a
Yeah.
cul-de-sac. We went
Mm-hmm.
in the evening look. It was an evening
Mm-hmm.
viewing rather. You remember? And her and her husband showed it. I think they were still also the sellers.
Yeah.
And we had put a bid,
Mm-hmm.
and we were pretty much on our way.
Yeah.
And there's more to the story, of course, of what we did up until that point. But I think the second biggest trigger was we lost the bid,
Yeah. We
and
lost
it
the
kind and
offer.
it went from we lost that bid and almost the morning of that loss, if you will. psychologically for more so for Heidi at that time. Two, we saw a second house. I don't know if you remember this one. It was by Tropical Park.
Yep.
And it had this mid-century charm. It was cool, but it was definitely older. And it was for sure looking back the rebound house. It was the house where we just gotta know, well, let's put an offer. Let's just, it doesn't matter if they don't even care.
Mm-hmm.
And we were very careful. And looking back, you definitely had set some parameters that we would be able to pull out. But I think you were just kind of appeasing the emotion at the time. And we lost that house. Well, we didn't lose that house. They took it off the market because they knew they were overcharging.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So here we were, and it was like done. I said, Heidi, we're going home for Thanksgiving. I'm from Baltimore. We're done. Let's just give it a break till the new year. Luckily, my wife is impulsive, and in a positive way, she went downstairs during the holidays and said, no, we're going to look at a couple more places. And she found this one house. It was Thanksgiving was on Thursday.
Yep.
We got back on Saturday. We saw it on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
We went, and I remember going down. We'd already been down to Palmetto Bay. I said, what is this street? And I said, no. And for me, a big trigger, Joe, I don't know why, is whenever I see exposed wires,
Mm-hmm.
like electrical wires, I said, this is not going to be a nice neighborhood. You can't be. What neighborhood is nice? And we got to the very end, and it was on the corner. And I said, oh, I remember. I went,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
yeah. And then past the wire, or past that house, past our house was this beautiful neighborhood. And we went in, and I don't remember how the viewing went. I just remember looking at you, and I said, Joe, I like this house. And it was one of those, oh, Jeff likes it. Okay. I think Jeff likes it.
Mm.
And we put a bid in that day, that night.
But
And
why did you like that house? What does that house have that you like the best?
well, there are a couple things now. Well, that's a terrible question to ask now because I love this house so much.
I remember
Space.
the closet. Let's talk about
Oh,
the
so of
closet.
course.
Let's talk
Sorry, I
about
didn't
the
want to
closet
expose
here for
myself.
a second.
Yeah, so we went upstairs, and there's two walk-in closets, and the first one was probably one of the bigger ones we had seen in all of our tours, and the second one was like 4x the size.
Yes.
Walk and
Yes.
Heidi goes, "Oh, that's your closet," and I said, "That's my closet."
That's your closet. It's like
That was a killer. Oh, that
oh
was killer. And then
yeah.
the size of the primary suite,
Mm-hmm.
that was a big thing for us. The backyard with the already built-in entertaining area,
Uh-huh.
and then unbeknownst to us, I didn't think it was gonna be a big pool, but that outdoor patio,
Mm-hmm.
that became a big thing for us. And
Yeah.
biggest thing for us, it's a 4-4
Mm-hmm.
at 3,700 square feet. So to get a
Mm-hmm.
4-4, 3,600 square feet, every bedroom has a full walk-in closet,
Mm-hmm.
and the space outside. It was one of those. Even to this day, Joe, we'll hop on the Compass here and there, and we'll
Yeah.
compare like what we paid and what
Mm-hmm.
you get now. And
Yeah.
you remember this? We closed, and 3 months later, the interest rates hiked 4, 5, 6%
Like your
points.
timing was awesome.
Like we just got in.
Yeah.
So awesome. So I'm really excited telling the story. This is good. We love it.
Well, and one thing that we got, one of the reason why we got this is because I put something in the contract that made our contract stand apart from all the other contracts that they got because they got a
Yes.
few offers. We were in a
I learned
multiple.
I learned a few things. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was called the escalation clause.
The escalation clause, and it's a little trick that not a lot of realtors use, but it was a differentiator that really, because we put in an offer that was basically like around, it wasn't the highest offer, but because of that escalation clause, and
Yeah.
they saw that you were serious, and they said, listen, if you can come up to this price, we'll pick yours.
Yeah.
And it was one thing with me and Compass agents, like we do ongoing training. I've been doing this for 18 years, but I continuously do coaching and training. And I was in a mastermind with other agents, and we were talking about ways to make our contracts, our offers stand apart from other people. And this was a time where you had a bit of a frenzy, multiple offer situations. We don't have that right now in the market, but I used the escalation clause on yours. And an escalation clause is like, we're offering X, but if you get a higher offer and you could prove it to us, you could show us the offer, then we would be willing to go $5,000 over your highest and best offer with proof. So it's a cool way to phrase it because you're like, you'll pay this amount, but if they get a higher, your offer automatically is $5,000 more than their highest offer, up to
Mhm.
a certain amount that you would be willing to pay.
Yeah, and Joe, what's attractive about that? I would imagine for the seller, but also for us, it just there's no games. It's like we don't
Right.
want to play back and forth hardball. We don't want to
Exactly.
do super negotiation. We're serious.
Mm-hmm.
We want this
Mm-hmm.
house.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, let other people shop, but whatever the top one is, we'll beat it.
Yeah, we'll beat it, and we had a cap on it. Like it's not like we were going to
Right.
beat it and you were going to go 300 over the 300,000 over the asking price. So we were able to cap it. But when the agent called me back and he's like, "Wow, you know, after some conversation, he goes, "Listen, we see that you guys are serious. I'm really impressed with this clause that you have. It makes it my job easier. If you can come to this price, we'll give it to you because we do have other offers that were higher than your initial offer, but because of that escalation clause, we were able to rise your offer to the top, and that's how you got that place."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Yeah. I'm pretty happy with myself on that one too.
Here we go. Snaps for
Yeah,
Joe. There
yeah,
you
snaps, snaps for me.
go.
So let me ask you though, what are some of the things that you were blindsided by, you didn't know, you were surprised by in the going from rental to buying, the whole process that we went through? What were some of the tips and tricks? Like if you had a colleague that was going to look to go down the same path that you went down,
Yes.
what are some of the things that you would tell them, like, hey, make sure this, or what about that, or hey, you
Yes.
you wouldn't know that you don't know this, but make sure blah blah blah. So
Yep.
that's really the insights and the knowledge that I want to glean from you, because you have a perspective that is different from me that's been doing it for so
Yeah.
long.
I think a couple of things. Number one, and in no particular order of priority,
Mm-hmm.
I would if I were doing it again, or like say when we do it again, Joe, I don't
Yeah,
know. I
maybe
would call
when.
your realtor and say, hey, look, these are the neighborhoods that we know of and what we think of them. Okay. And then see how accurate it is.
Right.
Because we were just very, very mistaken of what we thought this neighborhood was about or this area. And if you have someone who's familiar with the market or local, they'll shoot you. Hopefully, they shoot you straight. For us, I would put what I think is going to be a good neighborhood for us, get the realtor's take, and then ask, hey, well, knowing what we like, what would you suggest? I never would have looked at Palmetto Bay. So just, well, for me, I had the stigma of what Palmetto Bay was. And it
Mm-hmm.
was a little negative. And it's now that I live here, I wouldn't want to move right now to the
Right.
other areas that we're looking at. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the first thing. We knew to get your finances altogether, but what I would say is as long as you think it takes, and then they tell you it takes longer, add more time just to be safe. It
Mm-hmm.
takes longer than you think it's going to take and longer
Mm-hmm.
because just so many different things with they might need this document, they might need this document, or we'd like to verify this. And oh, sorry, they're not in the office this week, even though you need it this week. So can we do it next week? We're not available. So that was something. There were a couple of moments where I said, man, it's not even in our control that this thing is slowing down. Um, I think having a real conversation, what I would do, and I think we did a good job. We didn't do a great job. Is all right. This is our budget, and when when we get to an emotional spot, we know we are not going to go past this or below this. So let's agree to it now, because I think I would say 80% of the way got that number for our family,
Mm-hmm.
but there were some emotions that flew, and it's like, well, maybe we'll go a little bit like the second house I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We went a little bit over than our normal because of the emotion, that rebound house. But I think just getting locked in with your partner and your spouse and saying, no, this is the number, great, and we feel good. And when the emotions flare, you squeeze your partner's hand, you give him a kiss, and say, remember the number, and you're like, yeah, okay, we're good, we're okay saying no because of the
Mm-hmm.
number.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's important to really just do a lot of visits. I know it can be at some point it gets really, I don't know, cumbersome and tiring, but if we didn't go on that very last visit, we wouldn't have this house. So I think it's important to, if your realtor says, let's do another showing, just do it. And if you're interested, and maybe you slow roll it, maybe it takes 6 months, maybe it takes a year, hopefully not. But I'd rather see all the options. I'm an options kind of person
Mm-hmm.
than to just be impulsive and say, this is the house.
Right.
Um, get a great mortgage, like, and use whether it's your own networks, the realtors networks, find a good mortgage officer, a mortgage loan officer. We had a
Mm-hmm.
great one who was
Yeah.
very helpful, knew how to speak to us,
Mm-hmm.
and got, as you know, got us a
Yeah.
killer,
You got a
killer
great, great,
great
great
loan. So
mortgage. Um,
yeah.
to speak to that, I think the more that we can prepare buyers for the process and what's going to be expected, it will make the whole experience better. Like the more you're prepared. So one thing as far as like the mortgage goes, I'm at a point now where I make all of my buyers get a loan approval, a loan approval like a DU, a desktop underwriter, because that when you talk about like things taking a long time, a lot of it is them collecting all their financial information, putting it in one place, having it
Hmm.
easily accessible, having that information reviewed and approved, and you get real numbers. Because if you put the cart before the horse by like, oh, you have a pre-approval, okay, whatever, anybody can get a pre-approval, and then you go out shopping and you find a great house, and in any market, whether you're in a super competitive market or you're not in a super competitive market, the stronger your offer is, the better you have a chance of someone accepting it. And especially if you're going to get a mortgage as opposed to paying cash, having your loan approval is, I think, imperative to show your seriousness as a buyer. And also if you need to do a 30-day closing, it will definitely, you'll be in a better position to do that, because you could lose a week or two just getting the buyer approved, and then you have to approve the property that you're purchasing.
Right.
So I always tell buyers, like, get a Dropbox or a Google Drive box, put all of your financial and information in there. They're gonna ask you for the same stuff 3 or 4 times, and it's
Yeah.
gonna be frustrating. So if you
Yeah.
could just have all of your bank statements, your tax returns, everything that they ask you, a picture of your ID, everything in that Google Drive folder, and then just share the link with them, then it makes it a lot easier for them to
Yeah.
access your information over and over again.
Yeah. And Joe, so we kind of did that for
Hmm.
the House of Y, but because we got it all done, that
Hmm.
second one, we had an offer that day, and
Yeah.
then the one we ended up getting, it took 2 seconds. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
we had everything. I know. I tell people this and they're like, yeah, 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 yeah. And then, then they actually do it and they're like, oh, I'm glad that we did that.
I actually, now that I'm gonna renege my statement. If I were to recommend someone to go look for a house, I would tell them to do that first before they start getting excited about a house.
Yeah,
You just do it first, so you know your number.
you need to know your number.
You need to know your number versus you get on Compass and you're excited, and then you do your filter and you say, oh, this house, but you might not get approved for it, or something is going to happen. And I think
Right,
just getting on your ducks. You kept saying that, get your ducks in a row, get your ducks in a row, get your ducks in a row, and we finally did. And we did do that. If you remember, we visited in Thanksgiving and we closed before the end of the year on the holiday, right on the 30th or 31st.
right.
So,
I think
man,
we closed on the 31st because we wanted you to close on the 31st so you would have a full year of ownership from January 1 to December 31st. So you guys could take advantage of homestead exemption,
yep.
which
And
is a
that's the
tax deduction that you need to have ownership for the full year in order to take advantage of. So that's why we pushed it, and we did a post occupancy agreement. So
that's right.
in your case, I remember the sellers needed a little bit more time to secure another home. And so when did you guys move in? Like mid-February?
Second week of February.
Right.
Yep.
So we did a post occupancy agreement, which is basically like a lease back. And typically,
Mhm.
the sellers kind of like, you do them a favor and you let them stay in the house a little bit longer. A lot of times they don't pay rent necessarily, but we did hold back an escrow, like an amount of money in the account for a security deposit.
Yep.
So a security deposit that would be equal to what they would have paid in rent. You hold that back in case there's any damages to the property when they move out. You have some money to cover those damages, and if there wasn't any damages, then you would release that money back to the seller. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really awesome process with the buyer seller, like how that
Yeah,
exchange. It was
they
really
were
good.
really cool sellers, and it just goes to show. I wanted to have you on because some people are like, they want to do all of this themselves, and I can't imagine. But then you also have people that are like, oh, I'm gonna lay my own tile. My mom is that way. She'll try to lay her own
Yeah.
tile, and then it's a big problem, and
Yeah,
then she
I
ends
have
up
a thought
spending
for anyone
more.
watching this. Yeah, I have a strong thought on this. I think if you were the expert, then that's one thing, right? So if you were licensed, that's anyone can get the real. I'm just saying from my standpoint. I don't know if
Hmm.
this is apropos for your podcast, but
Yeah.
anyone and everyone, their mama, especially in Miami, is like, oh, I'm a realtor.
Hmm.
You mean they went through the class and got
Yeah.
the certification?
Hmm.
But I just If you want it done right, there's a difference between my mom's friend and my aunt does my taxes versus I have an account. And
Exactly.
I've seen both. I've seen both. It's like, okay, well,
Right.
my friend does my taxes, then that's a way different tax return than a professional doing. And that's why I feel the same thing with realtor. Also, I'm into sports, so when you're negotiating contracts, that agent's a good buffer to take out the emotion.
Yeah.
Like right now, like the seller could say something like, well, we want this. And if you're dealing directly, if you're a seller, I think that's bad because then you might be offended by someone's offer. And if you're a buyer, you might get into some emotional battle because you feel like they should be more flexible. But if I have you, I don't have
Mm-hmm.
to hear all that. I just hear numbers. And you might even say, and I think you did, hey, Jeff, Heidi, they offer this. And this is why I think this is really good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if we're just going at it directly without a realtor, I'm not educated. Wouldn't be as educated, but B, my emotion gets into play versus you can filter all that out. I think that's why we pay. That's
Yeah.
what you pay a realtor for. Why you want to have a realtor, rather.
Well, the beauty of it as a buyer, you don't pay the realtor.
Right,
It's a
right. But
seller's
that's
expense. So at the end, it's kind of, I think, a no-brainer for a buyer to use a realtor um, because they don't have to pay it. I think where it gets tricky is finding the right realtor because it could be a really bad experience if you don't have a good realtor that takes this seriously and knows the contract and understands the nuances of putting these deals together because it is a big decision. It's a very emotional decision for buyers and for sellers as well.
yeah,
And so to have a realtor who also, like, I do this every day, all day long.
yeah,
So and I learn new things every day. On every deal, I learn something new, but I am not as emotionally involved as my buyers and sellers are. I have to stay neutral, and I've had to learn how to stay neutral and just focus on getting the best deal for my buyers and working well with the other agent. And there's a lot of moving parts, and there is a
yeah.
part of like, there was some therapy sessions involved during this this whole
Sure, sure. And
thing.
there's part of me that says, yeah, my wife definitely needed it, but no, I needed it too. I
Yeah.
definitely, I'm not for sure. I want to say this: if you're vetting a realtor, I think it's a three-step vetting process. Number one, obviously referrals. Like who's referring them? Is it a trusted network? What are they saying from
Mhm.
someone else's standpoint? But number two, experience. Like I don't want someone who just started doing this. I personally, I want
Mhm.
someone with when I found out how long you had been in, we'll call it in the game, right?
Mhm.
And at the time, when I said we're looking for a condo, the response I got, I don't remember who I called. They
Mhm.
said, "Oh, you want a condo in South Beach? The person to talk to is like, I want to hear that. I want to know. Oh, well,
Mhm.
they're the one you talk to. And that was you.
Yeah.
And then the third is, I think from the emotional standpoint, I do think it's important to meet with that person and see how they speak to you because, like, if you have low patience and you want someone who's not long-winded, you got to figure that out. Because if you have a realtor who's long-winded and you don't like that, it's going to drive you crazy. If you want someone who you feel like you have a good connection with, which was kind of our thing, and we just felt really good with you. But also, Joe, we like that you shot us straight. We didn't want like all fluff and rainbows and but everything's happy. We wanted you to say, all right, no, guys, no, no, that's stupid.
No.
Don't. What
Yeah.
you just said, take that out of your mouth. You said that once. I said, oh, okay. But it was, I don't remember what it was, but I remember going, yep, that's right, Joe, afterwards.
You
So
know what
you
it
need,
is that I get so passionate about it, and then I forget about. I just get passionate, like it's like I'm buying a house. So I get very
uh-huh.
passionate about it, and I want what's best for you all, and so I do kind of like I'm very straightforward sometimes.
Yeah. And Joe,
I'm
what
pretty
you did,
blunt.
yeah, I know this isn't like, well, I just want to say this for you, what you really took the time to find out what we wanted and needed. I think most realtors do that, but you also kept that at the forefront through all the decisions and the conversation. So
Hmm.
when you got to know us, you would say, hey guys, I know you said this, but when we first spoke, you did say this.
Hmm.
Like, oh, we did.
Yeah.
Right. And so just someone who really has your best interests in mind. I think and that's hard to find. Like, you might have to vet a few. I tell people I have no shame in starting with a realtor and then as a few conversations and I don't think this is the realtor for me. You
Hmm.
should do that because this is your house. This is
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
agree.
my
I agree. And yeah, I knew that you wanted a big closet. Once I saw that closet, I go, oh, this is amazing. Jeff
That's
is going
right.
to love this. So, and so now you guys have been there for going on 3 years now, right? It's been
So
two,
December, we moved in February of 2022. So a year, a little over a year,
22. And then
like
now we're in 23. So a year and a half.
year and a half. Yeah, we love it.
And now they have another baby and
We
another
do.
dog.
So we have a 2 year, little over two, a 4 month, our first dog, and our second
Your second.
dog. So two dogs,
and
two
and
babies.
and two babies. You guys have a full house. And that house,
Yeah.
I mean, as much as you were disappointed, and I'd like to talk a little bit about this because you guys, we had the first house.
Hmm.
And looking back now, and I remember telling you guys this when we were like, banged up from losing that house, like this is not your house. This is not the house for you. This and look at it now, because I remember that house had a funny like upstairs area, and you
Yeah.
guys fell in love with it, but I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be completely
Yeah.
practical the way it is. I mean, you guys have an upstairs area now, but you have that foyer.
But the
Pri-
part that I remember I left the convo with you. The part we were compromising looking back was how modern the house was. It was
hmm
older and funky at the upstairs. This one we have a new, I mean, what,
Yeah,
2012,
yeah,
2013,
yeah.
a newer build, and
hmm
that, yeah. And as over romanticized as it might sound, you really do know you need your realtor to kind of be your Sherpa. It's like yeah, this one feels good, this one doesn't. I know it sounds foo-foo, but there's a lot of that behind this.
Listen, I'm as foo-foo as it get, man.
Yes, you are.
I'm really into energy, and one door closes, another one opens, and this is a
Yeah.
perfect example where we were so hooked on that first one, and I go, there's got to be there's something better for them. And look, now I just feel like you guys are in the perfect house for the size
Yeah.
of your family. Even if it grows in any other way, you have enough room. You have enough room for Mama G to come and
Yep.
hang out, and she has her own room, and you have your office, and you have that big double garage, and you guys have that as a gym, and there's room for you guys to grow as a
Yeah.
family, and there's even little projects that you want to do to like improve the house. So I feel like this could be, your, I don't know if you want to say forever home, but at least your home, that you guys are rooted and set, and you've made great friends with your neighbors. And I just feel like is the house that you were supposed to be in. You
Hmm.
know?
I agree. I agree. And we didn't think so at first. I mean, like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And funny, the House of Y, looking back, I made a comment to Heidi. We're close to the canal.
Mm-hmm.
I said we would never want to live right over the canal.
Yeah.
Well, House of Y is over the canal. So how
Right.
funny is that?
Yeah. And there's
Now that we know the neighborhood, we wouldn't want to live that far south. So yeah,
yeah, no,
funny.
and there's like alligators. I'm so afraid of
Yeah.
alligators. I'm so afraid of them.
We haven't had any run-ins yet, so we're
Well,
okay.
they're around, they're lurking. So
Uh-huh.
listen, Jeff, I want to thank you so much for being on with us. And do you have any parting words or any last thoughts that you would forewarn buyers that are coming and transitioning from rental to buying? Um, Anything that you just feel like they need to know this? Maybe they should read my book, right? Don't you think they should?
Well, it's funny. I wasn't prompt. You may have prompted it, but I have full disclosure. So yes, JoAnne has this awesome book. Full disclosure, we did not read it front to back. We pieced it. So
Yeah,
whenever Joe said, "Well, do you remember? Do you know about this?" She goes, "No, go to chapter 4. Just read and call me back."
yeah.
Fine, we would do it, and we're like, "Oh, okay, okay."
Okay, yeah.
So
Like
I
how
guess
do
the general term would be find a good resource, but
you,
specifically, if you're using Joe, her book, it's just, I think I would imagine if how many different types of personalities you deal with. You have people that want to know every detail, some that just want you to say it to them.
mhm.
But the book is a great resource, a tremendous resource. Number two, spend time with your realtor. I think the more you guys vibe and know what each other's interests, it really did help the product. Now, I think our friendship is a byproduct. I think we just
Yeah.
happened to become friends. I don't think that just happened, but
Mhm.
from specifically the realtor client process, getting to know you, and that was part of your thing because you were really great at building rapport and you wanted to get together. But I think some people I've heard say, "Well, that's just my realtor. I don't need all that." You may not need all that, until you didn't realize you needed it.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Get to know a realtor who's going to connect with you. And I want to say this because this wasn't even on the list for today. For other people that are thinking, well, I'm just going to keep renting in this market. Like, why would I buy a house? And there's just a lot on social media right now about not buying a house. And they'll give you 10 different reasons why to justify or how to justify not buying a house. Buying a house is awesome.
Yeah, I
If
think
you do
so
it
too.
right and you get the right and you do the right price point and you don't overpay. And if you do all the right things, having a home is unbelievable, and you can do all the great things you want to do
Mm-hmm.
financially, investment properties. You don't have to set. It's an and, not an or. You can do it, but I know some people have been discouraged of buying a home. Man, I would not be. There's a way to get a home. We thought there's no way we were going to get a home with the
Mm-hmm.
spike in pandemic, and we got the perfect home at the perfect price.
Yeah. And your
So,
home has gone up in value. Like you bought it at the
oh
perfect
yeah,
time.
I didn't want to say that. I didn't want to
Yeah.
say that, but yeah, for sure.
It's I look at the numbers sometimes. I'm sure you happily look at the numbers and you're like, woohoo, we bought it right at the right time.
That's right. That's right.
Um,
So that's my advice for
yeah.
sure.
Well, you guys are a perfect example of people are always like, how's the market? And people don't understand that home purchases are not based on the market. They're based on life events. So people are like, "Oh, I'm going to wait till the market gets better, or I'm going to wait till prices goes down," and that's not really what's going to motivate your decision.
Right.
And you look at your own self. What motivated it? You had a growing family. You didn't want to continue to pay rent. Your rent was going to go up, and for what you were going to pay in rent, you could own a home, and you could have enough space to raise your family. So it was a life event. It's we're getting married, we're getting divorced, I'm moving here, I'm moving there. I don't want to pay rent anymore. I want so people always think that they're going to buy or sell based on the market, and in reality you buy and or sell based on a life event. So
Right.
if that's really the case, because it's going to be a motivating cause that you're like, oh, my rent's going to go up and I could buy a house for that for what I pay in rent. That's a life event. And that's what's
Yeah.
and then you're going to enter the market wherever the market happens to be at that moment. So because that's the reality of the fact, it's important to have a good team of people. And when you start with a good realtor, you should be able to use their network of mortgage brokers or this or that. I hooked you up with Jody, who was on the
Home
show.
inspector,
Home inspector, yeah,
Jody from the
Allison.
legal team.
Yep,
Yep, I
yep.
remember
I
all of
mean,
that.
I had Jody on the podcast last week,
Okay, yeah.
and you put together a team to make the whole process, go as smoothly as possible. So, yeah, the book is. I wrote it for people like that. It's called Buying Miami: The Must-Have Guide to Purchasing a Home. It's on Amazon, and you could kind of just like you said, you can bounce around on it. You don't have to read it from cover to cover. It's more like this is a subject. This is like look at the table of contents and just go to the areas that you're most interested
Yep.
in or you
And I
need
think
to
it's also
know.
I think it's a red flag too for if you're with a realtor. Like one of the most comforting things with you is, on my team I have that. Oh, on my team, I'm just a suggestion. You might not need it, but I have this on my team. You had every person we would have needed on your team already. I think if a realtor doesn't have that, to me, that's one of those. They don't have the experience because if you're established, you would have that team. In my opinion.
It's true. It's true. It's very true. So, all right, my dear. Well, thank you so much for being
Thanks
a
for your
part of
time.
Buying Miami. And we have to get together soon. I still want to
Yes,
go
of
to
course.
Pinecrest on Sunday to the park, and they have a
Yes.
really good cachapa stand there. I don't know if you know what that is. A cachapa. A
Yeah,
cachapa
yeah.
is like a corn tortilla. It's kind of like an arepa, but they
I
put
I know
stuff
which
in
one
it.
I know what you're talking about. I think
You
it's called
know?
cachapa.
Oh my God, I had the best cachapa of my life there, and I'm still thinking about it. So really, that's my motivation for going to
Let's do it.
Pinecrest, and I want to
Let's
get
do it.
some local honey. They have local
They
honey
they have
there.
it all there.
They
They have
have
it
it
all
there.
there.
So okay, well, big kiss to you and all of your beautiful girls, and give Heidi my best. And we'll see you guys next time. Oh wait, one more thing.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners a little bit about what you do in your company.
Oh, so I work for
What's your elevator speech on that?
um I work for and am in charge of a wonderful, beautiful product called Cutco Cutlery.
Mm-hmm.
It's the world's finest cutlery, the number one selling kitchen cutlery in North America.
Yep.
The program I work with specifically is the marketing arm that has the actually number one college student development program for sales. So
Yep.
the product is Cutco. kitchen knives, and I guess my realm would be working with young people between 17 and 25 to give them great life and sales skills as they learn to sell our great products. So if
Yeah.
you know any college student, high school grad looking for work, or if you want the best knives,
Yeah.
Joe will get you over to me.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely you can get. And I've cut myself many times on
Yeah.
Cutco knives. Like when you get a set of Cutco knives, you just don't realize. And then it takes you like maybe 3 or 4 good cuts before you start to like really handle them correctly. But oh my God, it's like the envy of my kitchen, my Cutco
Love it.
knife set. And all of the products are just like amazing. Like my next big dream is to get the Cutco pots and pans. Those are
Add
those
it
are
on. There you
those
go.
are those are like the Rolls Royce of pots and pans, I gotta say. Like that's on my dream list. So, anyways, okay, thanks again so much for being here, and I love you guys so much. And that does it for this episode of Buying Miami. Thank you all for listening. You could find us on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube, and pretty much anywhere you look for podcasts, we're there. And you can find me at buyingmiami.net. You could find the book on Amazon. And I think that's it, right? You want me to say anything else? Nope, I got it all in. All right, guys, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. That does it for us.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, we're offline.